Well, today I've got two distinguished colleagues that I've known for some time. One colleague is in central England, and one colleague is in Northern Ireland, but he covers Southern Ireland as well. They're both involved in private practice. All three of us were until recently, myself until recently, was involved in private practice, and we're at different stages in our evolution, as it were, in private practice. We may be happy where we are, and we're going to talk about private practice in general. And what I'm going to talk about today with my colleagues is why we chose to go into private practice, what are the pros and cons, what was the attraction, how we market our private practice, and then we'll finish up with some of the administrative tools that we use to support our private practice. Perhaps Simon,
Okay.
go first, and
Okay.
tell us what is it that you find attractive, or what drew you initially to private practice, and why do you do it at present?
I think the reason I got into it, I think doctors and medical students are highly motivated, hardworking individuals. You spend your whole career from the age of 16 doing tests, exams, GCSE levels, med school entry, med school exams, MRCS, FRCS, getting consultant jobs. And that's quite a conveyor belt. And then suddenly it stops. You hit consultant life and suddenly that's it. And yes, you spend your first 5 years becoming a good consultant, but then that's the ceiling. Now, some people fill that void by going into educational roles, research, management roles. But I think another arm that people find attractive is private practice. And for me, it was part of it was the challenge, a new topic, something else to learn about business and marketing, something that I could sort of self-teach myself. So that to me was part of the attraction. But also, I think being a bit more in control of your work and how you wish to set things up. You can do things your way. You can write information leaflets without having to go through multiple committees. You can spend as long with patients as you like, and you can give the service that you feel you ought to give without the time constraints that we have in the NHS. So I think that probably is it in a nutshell.
And tell me, Simon, were there any things that you were concerned about going into private practice?
I think I started about 13 years ago, and there's always sort of older, more senior colleagues who I think probably try and discourage you from doing it. So I think you'll see that the new young upstart will maybe impact their earnings, their income, their reputation. So I think that was something you had to get around. One of the biggest hurdles I had to get around mentally was the dirty subject of money. I think for us it's very difficult to talk about money, ask patients for money. That's something that does take a bit of time to get your head around. It's something that we're not used to, especially working in the NHS where services are free and patients don't know what things cost. Trying to value yourself, sort of what sort of value do you put on your time and your training and your experience?
Yes, I think that's a common theme. I mean, I didn't really introduce you properly, Simon. I mean, you're currently maximum part time or 10 PAs in the NHS, and you
I'm
do.
full time. I'm 12 PAs in the NHS, so I'm a busy NHS surgeon. I've recently taken on the clinical leadership role for the department, covering 1.2 million population with now 9 surgeons. So it's a busy role, and actually with that comes a lot of headaches, a lot of emails, a lot of admin. And in many ways, the private practice is a bit of an oasis. It's time where you can get away, turn the phone off, and forget about that busy life and have a bit of peace and quiet. And it's
Yeah.
more of a hobby now for me, to be honest.
Yes. Yes. And you're a proper, I would say, a proper vascular surgeon. You treat arteries, veins. You deal with elective work. You deal with emergencies. But would you
Yeah.
say your private practice is mainly involved in veins?
I think it's 95% veins. I only market myself as veins, but because I'm a vascular surgeon, I do get other inquiries for aneurysms,
Yes.
for lower leg problems, but I don't market that. There's not much of a private market in that. It's often the wrong socioeconomic class, and treatments for those arterial problems are very costly.
Yes.
And private hospitals aren't particularly well set up for dealing with complex operations in highly comorbid people. So it doesn't
Yes.
lend itself well to private work unless you're in a busy London teaching hospital with intensive care, etc.
Yes. Yes. And forgive me for saying this, but I mean, if you're very busy and you are treating arteries and veins in your NHS practice, and you've got other leadership roles, and you're probably involved in management, you're on call, you're being woken up at night, and you're having to go in and do
Yeah.
emergencies. Instead of going down and doing a little bit of private practice, why don't you just take the day off and relax and spend some time with your family and enjoy yourself?
That's a good question. It's a slippery slope, isn't it? The NHS wasn't as busy as it is now 5, 10 years ago. I didn't have those leadership roles 5, 10 years ago. And having spent the time and energy establishing myself and my private practice, it's difficult just to let go. At some point in the future, I will give something up. And I guess I've got the options now to give up whatever I feel at the time is the right thing to do. But I guess whilst I still have energy, and as I said before, we're all generally hard-working individuals. We quite like the work. Um, it's still very fulfilling.
Do you ever see yourself going full time private practice with veins?
Yes, I've thought about it. I'm not quite there yet. I still do thoroughly enjoy the intricacies and the complex nature of the major arterial procedures. I guess I was probably like you, a little alarmed at how things can change rapidly with the COVID period, where that would have affected a lot of people who were in purely private venous practice, and suddenly things that are out with your control have a major impact on your business and therefore your livelihood. We're fairly protected in the NHS with regular income and good pension. So expecting it
Yes.
maybe later on when I'm a bit less financially dependent, then I think it's probably something I would consider.
Yes. Good. Well, thank you, Simon. And by the way, for anybody who's watching this and wants to find out more about Simon, I'm going to put a link to his bio in the description box below. Rather than embarrass Simon by telling you how accomplished he is, I'll just put a link in the bio and to his website. Now, Alistair, your turn then. So you're a bit further on. Well, I'm not suggesting that it's a natural progression, but you've left the NHS, or you've handed
I
in your resignation, and you're going to go full
I'm
time into venous work, treating people with vein problems early next year. And some
yeah.
might say, Alistair, given what Simon has just said, you're a bit crazy because we've got a war in Ukraine and all the uncertainty with that. We've now got a war in Israel. We're in recession, probably. Money's tight, cost of living crisis, energy crisis. You've decided to leave a steady income, a paycheck every month, and you've decided to enter full-time private practice treating veins. Alistair,
Hmm.
what made you do that?
Uh, I suppose it's been a slow progression over a number of years. Around about 10 years ago, I went less than full time as my private practice was growing. Instead of becoming more affluent, which might have been one way I could have made use of the money, I went less than full time about 10 years ago. I had, at that stage, children that were either in or approaching their early teens. Roll on about 5 years after that, I came off the on-call rota, which gave me weekends and evenings back. More recently, when the children were in their late teens and approaching university years, I went less than half time. So there's been a general drift, and I haven't got any richer. What I have done is got time that you can't really put value on back back instead. And I suppose, like all things, as you do less and less of something, then it becomes less and less attractive to keep doing it because it becomes more and more of a hassle, even though it shouldn't be. One of the things that Simon touched on, I suppose, and one of the attractions of doing more private practice is that I can't do what I want to do within the NHS. I've had a phlebology based practice for around about 5 years now, And during that time, our local commissioners have been imposing increasingly restrictive criteria on who they're prepared to offer treatments to, and now even assessments to. And it's a frustration for me in every NHS clinic that I still do, that I see patients with quite symptomatic congestive venous disease, and I know that if I was able to treat them, you could bring about a significant improvement in their symptom severity and their quality of life. And for whatever reason, or whatever criteria they don't meet, you have to sort of apologise to them and point them in the direction of some decent compression hosiery that they'll have to buy themselves, because you can't get decent compression hosiery on prescription, and say goodbye to them. So one of the appeals is the fact that I can carry on that side of the work and not worry about who's paying or what I'm allowed to do. I can treat patients and give them the treatment they need. As far as the financial side, I don't know how that's going to go. I mean, my big sort of step down happened in sort of mid 2019. I cut a full-time salary to a less than half-time salary. A nice practice ticking along in the background that was more than capable of keeping ends meeting. And then COVID happened, as you say, and I did no work for 3 or 4 months at all. I wasn't really any use to the NHS, although I was available if required, and I had no income or little income for 3 or 4 months. But as soon as the things started to reopen, the private practice got very, very busy very quickly. People had their holidays cancelled. They had spent the summer looking at their legs in shorts in the garden in the sun, and all of a sudden they had a bit of extra money to invest in sorting out the things that they didn't like the look of. So that period after COVID got very quickly, and it just continued to grow since then. Whether we see a plateau or a tail off coming on now, I don't know.
Yeah, I think that's very interesting. Yeah, I think that's... Sorry to interrupt you, Alastair. I think that's very interesting, because I recall when COVID arrived, and I run my private practice, as you know, within my own registered clinic, and I employ staff, and I offer practice privileges to colleagues, or I used to, and colleagues used to consult there and also do treatments. I was very fortunate at one stage to have 2 colleagues consulting and treating. And at that stage, the clinic was running without me. So, in a sense, the till was ringing all the time, whether I was there or not. So I could go on holiday, I could take leave, I could cut down my hours. At one stage, I was only working 1 day a week. When I say working, I mean seeing patients. I never regarded private practice in the clinic as work, really. I really look forward to it. I had a lot of enthusiasm for getting out of work, getting out of bed, going to work, doing the marketing, doing all the business aspects. It was just a great joy. But to come back to your point, during COVID, veins don't go away. And you build up all that demand so that when COVID came, was resolved or eased a bit, we had a big whoosh of demand at the end. And it's not like entertainment or restaurants. You can only eat so many meals. And if the restaurants are shut for 3 months, they're not going to have a rebound boom of 3 months worth of work. Whereas with veins, during lockdown, as you say, they never went away. So there was a huge uptick as soon as COVID eased a bit, the restrictions eased. And the way the NHS is going, you'll know better than I will. I do. I suspect the demand for venous practice is going to increase as time goes by. I don't foresee any investment in the NHS for the next 10, 15 years if both governments, both Labour and Conservative, are suggesting we're not going to get any investment until the economy improves. So, yeah, I think I would agree with that. It sounds very much, Alastair, as if you've got work-life balance sorted out and you see private practice as a way now of maintaining that. You seem at ease with the uncertainties of private practice, and you seem at ease with the fact that you're not relying on a check every month. There'll be some months which are absolutely excellent in private practice, and some months that are not so good, and that doesn't seem to unsettle you at the moment. Before I tell you my story, I'm going to share a little slide that I quickly put together. Let's see if I can remember how to share. Here we go. Share a screen. Right. Can you see that?
Yep.
Okay. Right. Well, I just on the back of an envelope or in a Google Doc, as you can see, I just looked at some of the reasons why one might choose private practice, and one of them is work-life balance. You can work fewer hours if you're fortunate, and you can earn just as much. So you can choose to ease back on your work hours and maintain a healthy work-life balance, which is something you seem to have done, Alastair. The other one that people might choose is autonomy. And this was a big reason for me leaving the NHS. I felt that I was being controlled, I was being directed. I didn't have very much respect at the time for the management structure. I didn't see them as well qualified and very capable, and I rather resented the fact that I was being told what to do by people who didn't really understand my work. I think private practice is very satisfying. I know from my own experience that it's a joy. If you get it right and you organise it properly, it's a real joy, and you can give a high quality service to your patients. You get a lot of satisfaction from that, and you get a lot of feedback from your patients saying how pleased they are with the outcome. And I've touched on dissatisfaction. I think working in a managed environment, particularly the NHS at the moment, is very difficult for people of a certain personality type who like to be in control of their life and like to do things the way they want to do. For me, it was never about money, and I think you, Simon, and Alastair have not been drawn by the money side. It was never about status. I never wanted a Harley Street practice in London. I just wanted to serve the local population where I lived. And I suppose I have to be a bit careful about this in my analysis. I think it might have been a bit of an ego thing. Maybe that was what actually made the work in the NHS so dissatisfying. I felt that I really wasn't in control. And maybe partly of that was ego, but it was never about status. I'm in private practice and I've got a Harley Street practice or anything like that. So I think those are the main reasons. My story was that I was, like you, Alastair, being restricted in the way I could treat patients. The criteria were getting more and more restrictive. I couldn't see patients with symptoms. It seemed like all I was seeing were patients with leg ulcers and very advanced disease. I wasn't able at the time to offer endovenous treatments. I was restricted to surgical stripping. And in my private practice, I had access to ultrasound and endovenous laser and radiofrequency. And I felt somewhat dishonest, whereas on the one hand, I could offer all these new modern treatments, whereas in the NHS, I could only offer surgical stripping. And I felt really that was something I didn't feel comfortable with. So I thought the honest thing to do would be just to quit and continue in private practice. So like you, Alastair, I left at a bad time. There's never a good time to quit a good salary and a regular paycheck. I quit during the global financial crisis. I still had quite a mortgage. I still had 2 children who were in private education. So some would say it was crazy. Others said it was brave. But my wife said to me, and she gave me permission to do it, she said, "Haroon, you look so miserable when you come back from the hospital, and you look so happy when you come back from working and seeing your patients at the clinic. Why don't you do more of what you like and less of what you don't like?" And I thought that was sensible. So my wife at the time gave me permission to quit the job. We accepted the uncertainty as a family, and it's been a good move for me despite the situation. So I think perhaps we've explored most of the reasons why people might go into private practice as a doctor anyway. Is there anything you wanted to add, Simon or Alastair?
I think
Should
that
we move on to
covers
the
it, doesn't it? I think.
yeah.
Yeah, I think it's the big thing is getting to do more of what you want to do and more of what you're good at without restrictions coming from outside.
Yeah, yeah, I think that's right. I think that's the main reason we do it, isn't it? To exercise our professional skills and knowledge to the greatest extent and to do our very best for our patients. As you say, Simon, it's a grubby subject talking about money, but once you go into private practice and when you go into full-time private practice, you're going to have to think about money. You're going to have bills to pay and people to pay, software to service and room rates and so forth. So you've got to make it a business. You've got to look at it as a business thing. And you've got to talk about money and value yourself and charge the respective amount. So, Alastair, I'll let you go this time. How do you market your clinical services, your private practice? How do you market?
I think it's the big one. It's still one of the biggest drivers of growth in my practice is organic growth and word of mouth from patients who I have seen and treated. Quite often will show up for review with a parent or a child in tow, and you know that you're going to be scanning their leg as well, or from general practitioners who, it doesn't happen anymore, but it used to, would be hearing from patients coming back, and then GPs would start to refer into you. So I think the organic growth has been one of the most important and one of the most consistent ones throughout the last 12 or 13 years. As far as actual marketing goes, I started the first thing that I did was set up a website, and about 12 or 13 years ago I spent one of the May Day bank holiday weekends with a couple of bottles of wine over the course of the weekend and knocked up a DIY website that looked quite good and one of the many popular do-it-yourself website services that were available at the time, and I ran with that for a good sort of 7 or 8 years, maybe even more. After about 3 months, and I looked on Google Analytics, it had 6 hits, 4 of them were me, and 2 of them were my secretary. And I thought, this is not really, it's the free trial period's up, and I can't just keep this running for me and my secretary. So at that point, I then started to pay for some professional SEO from one of the English companies, and that packages were. It was one thread fee in a month. Was how I costed the SEO packaging, and I thought if they bring in one patient a month for me, then they're earning their keep. A couple of months after they started, I then started getting emails through to the inquiry line from every SEO offering company based in India, and I thought, well, they're quite obviously doing a job. They're doing their job well, because I'm now visible to at least some people, maybe not the ones that are going to bring me income, and that then just over SEO is a slow process. It's you measure your progress over years, not over months or quarters, and the website has brought in a steady and a growing run of inquiries all that time. It recently, about 3 or 4 years ago, the existing website that was cobbled together by me on the bank holiday weekend with a couple of bottles of wine got turned into something a bit more professional by a professional web developer to make it look nice, and it runs in WordPress and all of the things that make you look more like a corporate website than a coffee shop website that has been produced in the same platform that you use to do your own. And now I'm quite happy with the overall appearance of it. I'm still not happy with the content. That's now that I'm moving on and to full-time private practice, and that's going to be my shop window essentially. I will be spending a lot more time over the next few months on the actual content and what's there. Things I haven't done that I should have or could have, and will think about then doing, is that more social media based advertising, before and after pictures in particular, or patient testimonials that are sort of popping up regularly on either a Twitter or X or whatever it's called these days. I've never tweeted in my life or even looked at Twitter, so I'm going to have to get my head around that, or Facebook, and get the social media side of things going as well, and that'll probably tie off the internet marketing side of things. The other thing that I did with one of the clinics where my private practice in Belfast is based is ran a few information evenings for patients and or potential patients, and myself and one or other of my colleagues would do an evening where people could come along. We'd do a short presentation about what we do, a few before and after pictures, a bit about the treatments, a bit about the costs, and they were quite successful at generating a small amount of work, but there were a lot of effort to do, and time consuming, and we ran 3 or 4 over maybe a 18-month period, and then decided that we weren't getting enough back from that to keep going, particularly at a time when at this stage we would have both been involved in full-time, or in my case near full-time clinical practice in the NHS with on-call commitments and everything that went with it. That might be something I come back to revisit in the new year when I've a lot more time on my hands, wondering how to spend it.
Good. That's interesting. What about you, Simon? How are
I
you
think very similar
your...
lines. Yeah, I think very similar lines. I think the website I identified at the start was the key. The first thing I had to think about was how I wanted that website to look and what I wanted to sell. There's lots of fairly generic corporate vein websites out there. Lots of sort of almost like we sort of had multiple doctors and a fairly corporate feel to them. I think I wanted to go along the lines of selling me and make it a bit more personal, a bit more about my story and about come and see me. So that's the way that I went. I did get someone to do my website. I agree, writing the content was tricky and challenging. I'm certainly up for a renewal of my website, because one thing I'm aware of now is that my website is not very mobile friendly. It doesn't open up on mobile phones particularly well, and people have moved on from using desktops to search the web to using their phones on the bus and the tube. So I've got to get that side of things ticked off. Otherwise, I think I market badly. I'm time poor. Marketing does require a bit of a strategy and time to sit down and write blogs or write editorials, etc.
I think we might have lost Simon, Alastair.
Yeah, it's been a freeze at my end here as well.
No,
yeah,
I agree
entirely. Certainly, when I started, you would have it's what GPs had more time to follow up their patients, and if they wrote a referral to you, they would then find out how that went. And in the early days, I did get quite a bit of growth from that. One of the other things that worked out quite well in my favour was that not long after setting up a radio frequency service in the clinic I was working in Belfast at the time, they took on some waiting list work from the Belfast Trust, and we did maybe 150 RFA cases that off their waiting list, and as soon as that stopped, we then started getting people coming in from the various practices of the patients that we treated, because they all of a sudden the GPs were aware that, oh, here's somewhere that you don't need an operation for veins. There's this keyhole thing that works really well, and the patients are really happy afterwards. But those days have moved on. You're quite right. It's now driven by the patient. The GPs do not. They're snowed under. I have every sympathy for the switch and the turnaround. The way that's gone. So when we were training, the GPs were the ones that people training in hospital medicine were sort of slightly envious of, and I'm married to one, so I can see that there's a general feeling that they were on the pig's back compared to what we had to put up with, and in the early years of work, and that's completely switched. They're under siege, they're fighting fires every day, and the hospitals have are seeing the sort of protection from on their working time that the GPs had back in those days.
I mean, you're very articulate. You can explain things extremely well. I disagree with that. And if you were to use some dictation software like Alastair suggested, you could just talk into a microphone for 10 minutes. It would type it all up for you, and you could spell check it, you could paginate it, you could bung in a couple of photographs, and if you used something free like MailChimp, which I never paid for my newsletter distribution, and I was very miserly with how I spent my money. I used Google Dictate. I used the transcription microphone on the free service on Google. Had I already invested in a dictation software, I would just talk for 5 minutes as if you were explaining to a patient about varicose eczema or a leg ulcer or phlebitis or what's the best treatment for a spider vein. You could dictate that in 10 minutes in the morning, have it all typed up for you. You could cut and paste it into MailChimp and ping it off. And I have to tell you, Simon, if you want to keep your patients you keep yourself in front of your patients, an email newsletter is the best way to do it. Sure, you can put it in a blog, and Google likes that because in terms of SEO, Google will look at a website that's regularly updated, and having a blog that's weekly. I think it was monthly actually, Simon. I don't think I ever got to the stage where I was doing it weekly, but even monthly is pretty good. You sign up, you go to one of the vein websites in the UK and you sign up for a newsletter. You'll hardly ever hear them. Yes, it takes a bit of time. If you sign up for MailChimp, it's free. You can have an automated welcome email that goes straight out. Thank you for subscribing. Blah, blah, blah. Ask them to email you back what they're interested in. You then give permission to email them and just email your PDF brochure. We didn't get anything printed after a while. We just collected email addresses. Give them something free on your website to download. For example, a PDF on varicose eczema, a PDF on thread veins, a PDF on whatever you think is major thing in your practice. Collect their emails, bung them into a newsletter, and then send them out a monthly newsletter which goes straight into their email inbox. And that way you'll keep your face in front of them regularly. They may come back to your website, they may not, but if you're emailing them once a month, I always thought once a month was enough. I think more than that is perhaps irritating. But yeah, once a month, Simon, come on. You could get an email out once a month. And Google My Business. Yes, you must. That's very easy. Just go to the Google website. What they'll do is they'll send you a card or something. They'll post you something to verify your address. And that can be your rooms at the private hospital. That's fine. Just walk in with your phone on record and then upload it. If you don't have Google My Business, you won't appear on the maps and you won't come up in the search for it. So that's a very easy win. It's half an hour of your time, and that's ongoing. Every month that will accrue. And I'm sorry to chide you again, Simon, but as Alastair was saying, you can get a free website builder that's something like, well, not free, but very, very cheap. Wix, Weebly, Squarespace. Squarespace is probably one of the nicest looking website things. Very easy drag and drop, mobile friendly, templates if you're not quite sure how to set it up. And one thing I would say to is that you are the best person to write the content, not a marketeer. You know your patients better than anybody else, and you know how to talk to them. Just write the content as if you were talking to your patient, and that's the best content to put in there. I mean, I had a WordPress website. I spent some money with a designer to actually get it set up, but once he set it up for me, I could change everything on the website. In retrospect, I probably would have gone something with something like Squarespace, because they are beautiful websites and they're very, very easy. Having said that, Wix. Sorry.
I went the other way. My first DIY website was done with Squarespace, and my current website is now a WordPress website that was created by a developer that was paid for. An awful lot of restaurants and coffee shops around my part of the world have Squarespace websites, and they looked exactly the same. So that was the first thing that I'd thought about. And I think my feeling is that the WordPress website does look more professional, more corporate, and it sets me apart from other people who have websites in my region. Okay. And I think part of that is reflected in some of the patients choosing to come and see me over some of the other websites that they've seen.
Thing that will separate your website from the restaurants is going to be your photographs, your content. It's not going to, if you use stock photographs, if you use stock items, you will look generic. And if you follow the design of a lot of vein websites, particularly in the UK, you'll look generic. Do your own thing. Take your camera to work. Take your own photographs. And avoid cliches that everyone's talking about these days. Things like world class, state of the art, gold standard. Don't use those terms. You don't talk to your patients like that. And too much flashiness, sliders, animations. I think Chris Pittman made a good point. He said just a one-page website would do it. It's the content. It's the content. Don't get hung up on the design. I do like the Squarespace websites. They do look nice if you put your own content in. So, Alastair, I would disagree with you on that. Having said that, I haven't used a Squarespace website. I've used a WordPress one, and I used Elementor as the interface. Again, you can set up a WordPress site very easily. You can download Elementor, it's free, and Elementor is the thing I used. But to be honest, I valued my time quite a lot. I didn't want to spend a weekend setting up a website, so I paid somebody to set it up for me and give me all the permissions and give me the tour. That cost me £1,800, and that website ran for 10 years, and I probably would have kept it going forever had I decided to keep the clinic. So, quite honestly, get somebody to do it if you want. They'll even set up a Squarespace site. There are Squarespace designers who'll set it up for you. The important thing is that you can go into it, you can change your prices, you can upload your content, you can set off your blog. You do the content. If you don't feel able to set it up the way you want it to look, then employ somebody. I think you do, Simon, because here's the thing. If you're thinking one day that you would like to go full-time into private practice, now is the time to do the groundwork. Now is the time, and now is the time to get your website sorted out. Now is the time to get into the routines of half an hour to send out a weekly or monthly, fortnightly blog and newsletter. The newsletter was always the blog. The YouTube was always the blog. The YouTube was the same content as the newsletter, as the blog. Three distribution channels, same content. One piece of work, 3 distribution channels, and that was That was my strategy, which I need to come on to next. Anything else, guys, we should touch on before we leave this? I'm mindful that Simon needs to
just
go
wonder
away.
what the feeling of reviews on your website are. There's a couple of options that you can do that. I ask patients to give a Google review, but there are also companies who will charge you for the pleasure of curating reviews for you. Do you think that sort of having that feedback up front is useful? Are you serving the companies more than yourself if you take out their subscription? Do you think patients pay, or potential patients pay attention to what they see?
Oh, yes. Reviews are very important. They're the next best thing to word of mouth. I only used 2 review sites. One was I Want Great Care, and the other one was Google. On Google My Business. You can only get Google reviews if you're on Google My Business. And bearing in mind, I think most people now, when they're looking for vein treatment, they're going to go to Google. And if you've got good Google reviews, and if you've got good reviews on I Want Great Care, which you've published on your website, on your homepage, then I recall lots of people saying, I came to see you because I was impressed with the reviews, the testimonials, and I think it's essential. I think I only chose Google and I Want Great Care because they're free. I'd never paid any companies to curate them or collect them. Google My Business, Google reviews, and I Want Great Care because they're free. And make sure that they are linked and prominent on your homepage. The other thing I would say is, Simon, if you were to invest in a patient management software, you might think about texting your patients with the link. One thing that I found very helpful is at the final review, or at the review of the completion of treatment, because we used to invite people to an annual vein check program, I would say to them, are you happy with everything? And they would say, oh, mostly, oh yes, I'm delighted. And then I would ask them personally, would you mind leaving a review for me? It really does help other people find me and to choose me for their vein problem rather than someone else. And you'd be helping me and my staff and my clinic by doing so. Personal invitation. They would say yes, usually. Very occasionally they'd say no, I wouldn't want to do that for privacy reasons usually. And then before they get home, probably on the way home or shortly after they leave, I would send them a text and an email with the link both to I Want Great Care and Google My Business. And I would say in the text, pleasure to see you today. Thank you so much for helping by leaving a review. Please click the link. Easy. Separate from the letter, separate from any correspondence you would have about their treatment, just a quick text, quick email, thanking them, link, boom. And you'd get a lot of people, whilst they're still in their mind, you're still in their mind, they would then click that, leave the review, and quickly write, very happy. Also, another little thing you might want to consider, if you are asking them for a review, ask them to particularly mention the condition that they saw you about in the review. Again, Google and Google My Business, that is free SEO, because Google gets to know that people who are seeing you have phlebitis, have thread veins, have leg ulcer. You get the thing. They're so free. It's just free. To be honest, I haven't ever paid anybody for SEO. I think 3 of us could do our own SEO. We know how to do it. We know what people are coming to see us about. We know what the keywords are. We know what the phrases are. We don't need a marketeer to tell us what SEO is. SEO, well, let's get on to the next slide. Are we finished with that one, do we think? How we market?
Okay.
All right. Okay. What we've covered so far, Alastair, Simon, is content. That's the stuff you're going to put on your website. That's the thing you're going to make sure you send out in your newsletter and your blogs and so forth. And the marketing is the communication platform that you're going to use. So you're going to send it out in a newsletter, you're going to send it out in a blog, you're going to send it out Instagram, etc., etc. The only three ways I've sent this out really has been YouTube and email, newsletters, and the blog. I haven't really done much with Facebook. I haven't done much with Instagram, to be honest. It didn't really work for me. I think those are the three channels that I would use to get my content out. And then you've got to make sure that you get your sales. Sales is actually somebody making an appointment and paying you some money for your service. And how are people contacting you, Alastair, if they want to see you, having seen your content and had it delivered to them and being interested in Alastair Lewis? How do they actually contact you?
It's generally via email. There are some direct bookings into the clinics. I have the contact details for the clinics that I work in on the website, and you can, if you're on your mobile phone, you can click the number at the top of the home page and get put straight, and get your call directed straight through. But I get an awful lot of email inquiries, either via email or via the information page on the website itself that generates an email to me.
When people phone that number, Alastair, who's picking up the phone?
That takes them straight through to the reception in the clinic in Belfast, where I do most of my Belfast-based private practice. So
have you ever phoned that number and have you ever done a secret shopper phone call to that number and asked and found out how they're answering it for you?
I haven't, actually. That's a good point. I phone the clinic regularly.
I wonder if that's why you're getting most of your inquiries by email.
You think so? Yeah.
I don't know. I'm being a bit facetious, Alastair. I don't know.
I suppose the receptionist at the clinic will be picking up the phone and introducing themselves as the clinic and not as Alastair Lewis Veins.
Yeah, that's the thing. I mean, my experience has been, again, I think a telephone, that most of our patients came through via telephone. They would phone the number to find out about us, not necessarily to make the booking, but to find out about us. Let me just ring that number and find out a bit more about Dr. Gadraj and the VeinCare Centre at the Melbury Clinic. And you know what? We only had it answered by clinical staff. Usually. Our clinical staff would pick up the phone, and sometimes they would talk for a long time about phlebitis or leg ulcers or thread veins. They'd talk to them about how much it costs straight out, why they need a scan. They get both legs scanned by Dr. Gadraj, not just one. They'd be able to explain about laser, etc., etc. Most of our sales, that is, money in the till, came over the phone. It was a phone call transaction. It wasn't an email transaction. I mean, have you got online booking, Alastair?
No, I don't.
So
I have, when an email query comes through, I will return a form that the patient can fill in their details, and that will then generate an appointment that they will then be informed of.
Right. Well, worth considering, Alastair, if there's a way you can tighten up on the sales. I don't really want to get too detailed in this and operations, because I think Chris Pittman's going to cover that in future podcasts in detail. He says he's a details man and he's a systems and processes man. So I think he's our man to tell us about customer support and operations and so forth. But I'm really very interested in the content marketing and sales aspects because I think they're the ones that I have neglected most early in my career, and it's only recently I've understood the importance of this. Let's go to, I'm not sure if I'm still sharing that, am I? Yes, I am. Let's go to the next slide then. Administration. Well, this is, I think, where there is an opportunity, Alastair, Simon, to make some changes now so that you're scalable. You may not be in a position now where you want to get too busy. You might be perfectly happy with things as they are. But it sounds as if you are reliant, in your case, Alastair, on a third party, somebody at the hospital answering the phone for you. You, Simon, one person answering the phone and getting back to them, where you are a little bit vulnerable to who's on the reception, how well they've been trained, and you're not very scalable at the moment, Simon. You may want to stay as you are, but you may want to get busy one day. Now's the time to put the systems and processes in place. And I think one is administration. If you're not using an electronic patient record at the moment, I think one ought to be. I know, Alastair, you use one called Clinico. There are other systems available, but you're familiar with Clinico and I'm familiar with that. I think, Simon, if you want to start using an electronic patient record, that's a good one to use. Though I don't get any financial affiliate sponsorship or kickback from Clinico, but I'm really impressed with Clinico. You've got the ability to do template letters, which I can email straight out afterwards. The patient gets their letter from me before the end of the day, and it's all done on template letters. Because I'm only treating a limited number of conditions, I can do a template letter. You can send out texts. Yes, you have to buy credits, but their texts are relatively cheap. You can have appointment reminders. You've got an appointment schedule, so you can see who's coming and what they're coming for. You can do consent forms, send out consent forms before they come, patient demographics and past medical history. You can collect all of those things. And it's for one user, it's £39 a month. And I think it's 50 something for up to 5. So you can have your secretary see your appointments. You can see your appointments. You can see all your patients in real time. Any changes that your secretary makes, you can see. I think it's excellent. And there are telephone answering services. You can allow access to certain things like making appointments if you wanted to. I used a call centre to answer my phone, and they answered it according to a script that I devised. So all my telephone calls were answered by a virtual office, and they were given a script so that they gave the impression that you were calling the Melbury Clinic VeinCare Centre. And they were very good. They were very good at collecting names, addresses, email addresses, telephone numbers. I think the worst thing for your business is to have a telephone answering, to have an answer phone, or not to answer the phone at all, or to have a mobile phone number. I liked the idea of having a call centre answer because the default was my staff would answer, but I couldn't afford to have my staff 5 days a week, 12 hours a day, answering the phone. And if you are answering the phone, you can have Google My Business then showing your business hours. We were open to Google My Business from Monday to Friday, 8 till 6, and Saturday morning, but in fact, opened Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday in the latter part of our business. So you can improve your visibility and your accessibility on Google My Business by having a call centre. And yes, it costs, but bearing in mind if you see one more patient per month, even just for a consultation and scan, it will pay for itself. So I think that's a good investment. And we had staff that did multi-roles, so anybody could answer the phone, anybody could take money, anybody could make an appointment, anybody could answer a clinical question. And I think if you're at the stage that you are at the moment and you're thinking you might want to go full-time and get very busy, outsource as much as possible. or automate it, or have policies and procedures and schedules for things so that even your own staff know exactly how you like things done. And I have to say, I liked the ability to send texts to patients. So I would send a text to a patient saying, for example, I hope you got home safely today after your treatment and that you're comfortable. Please text me back if you have any concerns. The text would come back via Clinico to my phone, and I could send out text from Clinico. My phone number never really appeared. Then I would send up a follow-up text 3 days later. Now you've taken the stocking off. How does it look? How does it feel? Again, a quick text back. Yes, it costs 10p a text, but bearing in mind I rarely spent more than £1 per patient in texts. A text doesn't take long. I mean, I preferred a text to actually phoning them. I know one of my colleagues always gave a phone call in the evening and gave a phone call 2 or 3 days later. I used to do that. I used to outsource that to the clinical staff. I used to ask my nurse or the manager at the clinic to give them a quick phone call. But it was a text from me as they got home, a text from me 3 days later as the bandage came off. People don't really want to talk to you. If they want to talk to you, then you have to phone them. If they're very bruised or they're very sore, you talk to them, of course. But everybody got a text. Everybody got a text from me on the day of that procedure, asking them how they're getting on, hope they got home safely, any problems, text me back. Not call me, any problems, text me back. And then if I couldn't resolve the problem with a text, I would give them a call. And that was rare. That's a complication in my book. A phone call after 5 o'clock or at weekends is a complication. And it's very rare. You can preempt these. Now, other thing, as I'm sharing something with you, I know you have to go, Simon, is you put all your aftercare information and all your aftercare advice and what they would expect in their patient journey on your website. So you send them a text saying, after your EVLT, this is what you can expect, and the link. And it would have all what they would expect on day 1, day 2, day 5, when the stockings come off. And they'd also have some FAQs there. So they could look at the FAQs after EVLT or after RF. But it's all on the website. So again, it's just a text and a link to a page that doesn't necessarily appear in your menu, but is on your website that they can link to in the text. Right, well, I don't think I can add very much more. I think you guys have covered everything. These are the things I wish I knew and done before I actually started PP private practice. The importance of a website, the power of YouTube. That's a very powerful one. That was mainly my marketing medium. The value of working with colleagues. I think solo practice is difficult. I really enjoyed my time in private practice in my own clinic when I worked with 3 other colleagues. That was really good. And you need to have systems and processes and a comprehensive operational manual. I didn't really understand the importance of marketing, and I didn't really understand the importance of outsourcing because I was mean. I didn't like spending money. But think of it as an investment. Simon, you're looking at the clock, I can tell. That's all right. No, I think we've covered everything. I didn't want to embarrass you. I'm looking at the clock too because I've got an appointment at the same time, Simon, so you've just reminded me it's time to wrap up. Guys, thank you ever so much for your time. It's been a pleasure talking to you. I'm going to put this on YouTube, and I'm going to put links at the bottom to your websites and to your bios. And for everyone who's watching, I hope you watched this episode to the end and that you enjoyed it. If you did, click the like button, make sure you subscribe, and check out all the links in the description box below.